This is my wish for you. Comfort on difficult days, smiles when sadness intrudes, rainbows to follow the clouds, laughter to kiss your lips, sunsets to warm your heart, hugs when your spirits sag, beauty for your eyes to see, friendships to brighten your being, faith so that you can believe, confidence for when you doubt, courage to know yourself, patience to accept the truth, love to complete your life. Our beautiful world is full of wonders and marvels. Everything is a created being, and everything comes into being, grows, and then eventually dies away. The seed develops, grows into a plant like a tree, and then when full-grown, scatters its seed to begin another life cycle. Everything has its own time. We all yearn to live in eternity. The life force within us feeds our desire to conquer, to achieve, and to love. All for the hope of being remembered in the hearts of those we love.
He had a very beautiful demeanor. He was elegant. He was a kind man. And I thought, oh my God, he wants to go out with me. I'm 25 years old. And I love dancing. And the first night that when we went to the club, we were dancing and everybody was taking pictures of us. I didn't understand what was going on. I only remember that he had very beautiful blue eyes. He was tall, very good looking. I think I liked his blue eyes. I had no idea who he was.
Peter era un uomo di grande capacità morale, un uomo che non gli piaceva mai il confronto, ma il compromesso, ma ciò nonostante era molto duro sui suoi principi.
Peter was an example because of the way he lived his life and the way he operated in the Canadian society.
Grande persona, grande amico, bei ricordi. Sì. È una persona che ha dato molto al Canada, allo sviluppo del Canada. Sì, si sentiva friulano, italiano, ma anche canadese.
I always saw him as a gentleman going out of his way, always a peacemaker, and I like that sort of character.
And for me, Peter was an exemplar of a man of principle. He was a family man. He loved his wife. He loved his daughter, his family. But Peter was a modest man, and he really didn't talk much about himself. And he was a private man. He had a public life, and he had a private life, and I think he kept the two quite separate and distinct.
I have him, I use a little bit my senior, so I have him as an older brother, and he wasn't, to my recollection, a fancy man, or he was just good, steady, solid, simple, but straightforward.
The early history of immigration into Canada brought many men in search of a better life for themselves and their families. After the outbreak of World War II, the Canadian government restricted immigration from the enemy countries, which included Italy. Wives and children were not allowed to join their loved ones who preceded them to Canada. Toward the end of 1947, this ban was lifted. a clever and curious young man who was the youngest of his family, left his small town of Bertiolo, located in the Friuli region. At the port of Genoa, he boarded a large ship named Saturnia, bound for America, to meet the father he only knew from a photograph. As the young man climbed the gangplank of the ship, he left behind his homeland, his mother, and a life marked of sacrifice and poverty. He was eager to undertake this journey and forgot to be afraid. This young man was Peter Bosa.
Peter's father was a Canadian citizen, so he wrote to his father and he said, "Send for me." And the first boat that left Genova in 1948, Peter was on it. And also, Peter would be 21 on May the 5th. So he had to leave before he turned 21, otherwise he would have to go in the army. And he left a week before, and he came by way of New York.
Anche lui esce di un momento difficile nella storia del paese. Immediatamente dopo la guerra, l'anno 1948, Peter lavorava prima come assistente alle forze tedesche e poi alle forze unite americane e inglesi. Lavorava attualmente vicino a Villa Manin o a Villa Manin come interprete, però lui, il suo lavoro era il fornaio, lavorava in un forno di pane e correva in bicicletta a portare il pane ogni mattina da un piccolo paese, da Bertiolo a Pozzecco, eccetera. Il suo divertimento era suonare il sassofono in una piccola banda del paese. E poi decide di venire in Canada, e la cosa forse più importante, bisogna tenere presente che Peter ha conosciuto suo papà per la prima volta a New York. Non l'ha conosciuto quando era nato perché suo papà era già in America ed in Canada.
Post-war Canada was a dream destination for many young Italians. They heard fantastic tales of this beautiful land where everyone was rich and the streets were paved with gold. Peter Bosa was one of those young Friulans who wanted to succeed. Before he left Bertiolo, he said to his mother, "You will see what I will do in Canada." He took an enormous leap of faith for a brighter future and had the courage to follow his heart and intuition. Peter was not like a bird of passage. He was more like an eagle that is fearless, tenacious, and has great vision. Peter was willing to give his best to his new country, a heart to love, and strength to succeed. He began a new life in Toronto, working at his father's clothing shop as an apprentice cutter, but his career in the clothing industry ended quite early.
Well, Peter was ill. He had TB. In 1951, he ended up in the Mountain Hospital in Hamilton. And his best friend, Brian Land, was also in Mountain Hospital with TB. And they became very good friends. And Brian was already part of the Liberal Party, and Peter became a member of the Liberal Party.
During his 18-month period of recovery in Hamilton Mountain Sanatorium, he completed his grade 12 education and became very good friends with Brian Land, an active member of the Liberal Party, who inspired him to become involved with the political party system. Peter was a passionate Canadian who wanted to improve the lives of others. He had integrity, a strong determination, and a love of politics. Peter's life in Canada was like a river. It started with a drop of inspiration that traveled a long and winding path and ended up somewhere he could never have imagined.
Peter was a very private person, but he liked the Canadian system. So he was accepted by the Canadian society, and he loved that. Peter loved that. Peter was a joiner. At the same time, you knew very little about him. He was a very private, but he joined. He joined the Liberal Party. He joined the CIBPA, the Canadian Italian Businessmen Association. I think he must have joined in 1955, 56. Peter was a joiner, and then he became an insurance salesman. And when you sell insurance, you have a lot of friends.
Peter Bosa built a successful career in insurance and with time became a partner with Clover Insurance Brokers. Caught up in the spirit of a booming post-war Toronto, he thrived in the ever-changing diversity of the city and became a strong voice for new Canadians. He truly believed that the role of government was to serve the people. As he freely gave his time to help members of the Italian community, his dedication led him to work in Ottawa in 1963 as a special assistant to Guy Favreau, the Minister of Citizenship and Immigration. After fulfilling that service in Ottawa, he returned to Toronto to run his insurance company and also served as alderman on the York City Council for several years. With pure determination, tireless energy, and a passionate heart, he paved the way for immigrants to integrate themselves into their chosen country where they too could find success.
So Peter was a remarkably warm and thoughtful person and very interested in people. A lot of people, immigrants, come and they become self-absorbed with their own careers, how to get ahead, how to make business, how to make money, all of which you can do in Canada. But Peter retained this immigrant sensibility about saying, you've come from nowhere to somewhere, how can I help?
I think he realized at a young age, and when he was here in the late 40s, early 50s, that Canada was going to give him, or gave him, the opportunity that La Bella Italia, at least in those days, would never have, could never have. He came to realize that, and as people were getting off the boats and trains, those of us who came after him, he felt he wanted to share that song because Canada had been good to him. He had a social conscience. He believed in somehow, although we did not use the word we want to give back to the community in those days, but certainly he felt this social need to bring and elevate his own people, his own immediate community, the Furlans, but beyond that, he got involved, as I said, in soccer, keeping young men who were working hard on construction, keeping them active. He got involved in politics, trying to represent those many people who did not know the system, who did not know the rules, who did not speak English, and therefore for the smallest little thing they went to Peter, what are we going to do? What do you do? And he was always there somehow to calm them or reassure them that somehow if there was a problem it could be overcome, and he would do his best.
Well, in a way he was my first mentor, but Peter's personality, we saw him as a leader, but a person that could be approached, and a person that would really, we felt that he had the knowledge to give us some good advice. And he did that from time to time. Whenever we had difficulties or whenever we wanted to try something new that was out of the ordinary, and there were a lot of those, we would seek his advice.
He was certainly very gracious and very gentlemanly-like in all his dealings. So that's certainly one way, as an example to those of us who are younger, that we should probably comport ourselves. Certainly he was an example for me in terms of how to conduct yourself with other people, how to be effective, gentle, and gracious. I can certainly dealt with him many times. Certainly he was helpful whenever there was a need to do something and I had to call him. He was always responsible.
Peter had a wider vision. So sure, we had a club, and it was called the Italo-Canadian Youth Club, but there was more to a club than recreation and dancing. He certainly had the vision of bringing people together to dialogue and to be exposed to various aspects of not only of the Italian milieu, but the Canadian life. Because we, as a youth club, and this isn't happening even today, we would talk about politics, we we would bring in speakers to talk about citizenship, social services, and he cared. That was the beauty, and that was the beauty of the youth club also. Regional difference were not even spoken; they were not even known in our minds, because I guess we were young and we came from different places, and we were there together as Italians. Italians. At the time, he was strictly a private person. He was the president of the Italo-Canadian Recreation Club. And of course, that's where he met his future wife, Teresa.
I saw Peter the first time at a CIBPA dinner in 1963. The CIBPA men, Chiba, now they call themselves Chiba again, had a dinner in May of 1963, and they honored 10 Canadian Italian students from the University of Toronto, and I was one of them. And I remember that evening, the Minister of Immigration, Favreau, was the guest speaker, and Peter was his assistant, because Peter was the assistant to the Minister of Immigration in 1962, 63, about that time. And that's the first time that I saw Peter. In June of that year, I saw him again. I was having coffee with Angelo Delfino and Joan Spendic Costa, the future Mrs. Costa, Professor Costa's wife. And we were having coffee at La Seme on St. Clair. And that used to be our place where we used to gather. And Peter and Fritz Zorzi were sitting there. Angelo got up, went to say hello to them, and then he came back. And he never said, "This is Peter Bosa, the assistant to." So that's the second time that I saw him. The third time was in 1967. I used to belong to the Piccolo Teatro. I was an actress, but I took small parts because I always forgot my lines. So that evening, Peter was introduced to me by a good friend, Flavia. And she came up to me and she said, "Oh, this man wants to meet you." I said, "Fine." He came up, we met, and I could see my mother standing, looking at the scene. I could see my mother looking at the whole scene. Peter was 39 at the time. I was 25. So my mother observed the whole scene. I don't think she approved. And then that evening he said to me, "Would you like to go to La Seme for coffee?" I said, "No, thank you. I'm going with my university friends." There were 100 of us. We all went to La Seme for coffee. After the play, that evening we did La Smania per la villeggiatura. It was a very funny play. And we raised $10,000 for Florence, because Florence had been flooded the year before. So we raised $10,000 from Florence. On the Tuesday evening, he called me at the house. Flavia gave him my phone number. I answered the phone, and he said, "This is Peter Bosa." And I said, "Who?" I didn't remember. He said to me afterwards, "You have very bad manners." I said, "Why?" He said, "Because you shouldn't have said who." I said, "But I didn't remember who you were." And that evening he said, "Would you like to go out Saturday night?" I said, "No, again, I'm going to the club, the Italian club on Brandon Avenue, because we were having a dinner." Oh, he said, "I was invited by Mesaglio, who used to be the director of the Piccolo Teatro." And I said, "Okay, Peter, come and pick me up." That evening, my mother never worked on a Saturday night, never. She got ready. We had a very beautiful house on Scott Road at Keele and Eglinton. That evening, she decided to make sausages. I said, "Oh my God." Peter arrived and he sat down and he talked to my mother about Italian politics. And I'm standing there. My mother had a dark face. My mother was very kind, but I don't know why she didn't like him. I don't know why she didn't like him. They talked at one point at 7:30. I said, "Peter, let's go. The dinner has started. Let's go. So off we went, and that's how it all started.
Obviously, Peter found in Teresa something that he was looking for, and vice versa.
I think I fell in love with him the following year, because when I met Peter, I was already in third year. I was doing my master's, and I had 2 years. So I said to him in June, I said, my mother doesn't want me to go out with you. She's so against. She never told me why. I thought it was the age difference, but I couldn't understand that because my grandma Angela was 18 years younger than my grandpa Felice. So I couldn't understand why she was so adamant. Even my brother Carmen, my oldest brother, both of them, they were so against this man. And I said to him in June, I am going to Italy in August. I said, I have another year to go. I said, get lost. I told him, get lost. And I really resented that. I thought this man that I liked him. I really liked him. In those days, a girl did not call a man. And I thought, how am I going to get him back? And I was the secretary of the Dante Alighieri Society, so I sent him an invitation. And I signed it, Teresa Patullo. I didn't say sincerely, I just signed it. And again, he said to me, you have very bad manners. I said, why? Because you should have said sincerely. I said, but this was a letter, it was an invitation to a Dante Alighieri Society meeting. And that's how it all started. I said, I'm going to get him back. And my mother came back from the States. And the first thing, when I picked her up at the airport, she said, Esci con Peter Bosa. My God, I started to cry. I said, yes, and I want to marry him. She didn't talk to me for 2 weeks. For 2 weeks. And I thought, what am I going to do? I was studying, and I thought, I'm going to marry him. I'm going to run away with him. I'm going to run away with him, and that's it. So in February the 14th, I ordered 20 red roses. In those days, that was a lot of money. That was $20. I used to earn $50 teaching at the university. I was teaching Italian. Peter was ready to get married. Peter was ready to have a family. He wanted a family. He wanted children. He wanted 4 children. He sheltered his family. He sheltered his little family. But then I have this huge family on the street. My brothers, they sheltered me. You understand? My mother, you should have known my mother. She was the biggest boss. She was the one that ran the whole family. Imagine having 6 children. And my mother lived right next door to me. My mother kept us together. She protected us. She was an unbelievable mother. Unbelievable mother. I don't know anybody like my mother. The first year that I married this man, I understood that he had a huge agenda. A huge agenda.
Well, the Italian community in the 60s, 70s, 80s was very compact and was concentrated mostly in Toronto. And it was the time when the Italians made an effort to organize themselves through clubs, associations, to the Italian Congress. Well, I met Peter as soon as I came to Canada, immediately after, in 1968. He was a councillor in the old city of York, and he was very modest, was not partisan. Impressed me the fact that he got along with everybody, and he was very conscientious in his job. We were politically not the same conviction, but I respected him, and I think that he respected me, and we had a relationship that lasted for many years.
For Peter Bosa, there was no right or wrong argument, but only different opinions that must be respected. His strength came from his belief in standing tall against racism and injustice. He was once described as a man who had a quiet word, a gentle nod, and an attentive ear.
Si potrebbe dire la sua semplicità, era la sua il suo carattere, la sua semplicità. Era sempre disposto a qualche cosa. Era difficile che Peter Bosa dicesse di no a qualcosa, se si poteva farlo, anzi si andava in cerca di poter fare qualcosa. Nel 70-72, Peter mi riavvicinò e mi parlò a lungo perché non entrassi, non do una mano nella nostra comunità, eccetera. Ed è lui che mi convinse ad entrare alla Famiglia Furlane. È da lì che è nata la nostra amicizia, che poi è cresciuta fino a un punto che gli ultimi 5-6 anni della sua vita io e lui ci parlavamo ogni sera.
He was one of the few politicians, he became a senator eventually, the first Italian senator, and was not partisan, which was a quality that I appreciated very much.
There was an opening for a Senate appointment. And I remember there was a list of candidates. At the top of the list was Johnny Lombardi and a businessman and another guy and so on. And I knew them all. And Peter's name was also on the list. And I was asked my opinion. And I did everything in my power to not only say, I think Peter should get the job, but here are the 3 reasons why he should get the job. Number 1, first of all, he had this immigrant sensibility. Number 2, he was a proud Italian, but he wasn't. He was from the north. Remember, the Italian community here is divided between the north and the south. He was from Friuli. He was a Furlan. Having said that, he was also a very thoughtful guy, very well read, and very articulate. And I thought it was very important for not only for Peter to get that job, but Peter would be a better representative of the Italian community in Toronto than anybody else. He had the political expertise, he had intellectual interests, he was a people person, and he had a warm heart.
Mi ricordo che quando ho ricevuto la nomina a senatore si trovava in Italia con me e eravamo a cena e dopo cena siamo andati a casa e il telefono a casa mia suona verso le 2:30 del mattino. E allora ho detto, ma che succede? E rispondo ed è Peter Bosa e mi fa, senti, devo partire domani per il Canada perché è venuta una telefonata dal primo ministro e devo essere ad Ottawa.
April 5th, 1977 was a glorious day for Peter Bosa. His dream came true. He became a Canadian senator. Prime Minister Pierre Elliott Trudeau appointed him to the Senate, representing the division of York-Caboto. Peter Bosa was the first Italian-Canadian senator from Toronto.
He was appointed because the Prime Minister wanted to recognize the contribution of the Italian community to Canada, and he chose Peter as an example of an Italian who had integrated perfectly in the Canadian society and could be an example for the Italians and for Canadians.
It was one of those steps, looking back 50 years later, that they were steps in the community maturity and community development. Certainly, this was not the first one. I don't know whether it was the 10th or the 18th, but it was an important step. And along with the financial and economic success, which was starting to happen in the 70s, we also had a recognition, and somehow this recognition came into the appointment of a senator in the name of Mr. Peter Bosa.
Peter Bosa was a highly active and much respected member of his vibrant community. He said, "Being needed and useful is the biggest recompense for me that I can have in life." He was admired as a sensitive man with fair judgment and goodwill. As chairman of the Canadian Consultative Council on Multiculturalism, he continually defended the right to celebrate the diverse cultures in Canada. He served as president of the Inter-Parliamentary Union, a position for which Juan Carlos, King of Spain, honored him. He was a co-founder of the chair in Canadian-Italian Studies at York University, and he was the key fundraiser for many charities. Senator Peter Bosa's contribution to people and community spoke volumes.
So Peter was an exemplary senator. He was a good speechmaker, and above all, if there was anything that Peter had, he had humility. He was a very humble man, and he was a man of many, many talents. Peter was very thoughtful in preparing his speeches, and so when Peter got up and spoke in the Senate, people stopped and listened. He wasn't, how can I put it, a spokesperson in the Churchillian style. He didn't have grand flourishes and so on, but he was thoughtful, and he was focused, and he was, how can I put it? He was in the great tradition of Italians who speak quietly and speak effectively. Peter was not a man that would settle for second best. He tried his best. At everything he did, he tried his best. In his work, overseas, in Ottawa, he was a hard-working guy, but he never ever lost his principles, and I respect that. Hard to do.
Peter Bosa never changed. He was, as a senator, he was exactly the same way as he was in the first days in 1950 or so. He was opening the way for others to follow.
Around the same time as he was appointed, we had the Friuli earthquake, and we at Colombo Village Charities were organizing a relief effort for the Friuli earthquake, which the telethon was supposed to go to help Villa Colombo, and at the last minute, a number of people involved on the board and off the board, we decided that Friuli, in the immediate moment, needed the help. And certainly, I remember Mr. Bosa, along with Mr. DeLuca and Mr. Muzzo and a number of others who were very instrumental, helping to provide that leadership that the community was very fortunate to have in Mr. Bosa, but also in a number of other people at that point and at that time.
Well, he was very involved and he was very generous in that sense because he took the lead with the other people from Friuli, and they made a great effort to bring the aid to Friuli and to help the reconstruction, which today is still a model.
Perché Peter è onorato come il secondo senatore a vita dell'Italia, ciò nonostante per Friuli durante il terremoto è stato partecipe, lui era responsabile delle pubbliche relazioni nel nostro comitato, mentre io e Marco Muzzo eravamo i due responsabili coordinatori del progetto.
He felt, I think, as some of us did, that politics is based on the necessity to help people that can't help themselves.
Yes, Peter Bosa's political life as a senator was, and until today is still, well respected, but he was more than a great politician. He was a loving family man and a loyal friend. He honored his family and close friends with deepest affection, and he remains anchored in their hearts.
Questo uomo poteva dare alla comunità come uomo. Lasciamo parte un momentino la politica, che lui sì viveva la politica, ma in realtà era la sua capacità umana di amicizia, sapeva mettere la parola giusta.
Our relationship continued, yes, it continued, and we would get together from time to time. I had the pleasure, of course, of being at his wedding, and eventually, when they were ready to form a family and build a house, I had the privilege of designing their first house, and the house where Teresa is still living today.
He loved this house. He loved his house. He never left the house without the children hugging and kissing him. Never. It was our way of saying goodbye, because he traveled so much. He traveled so much. I thought, my God, if that painful, and my children are going to miss him so much. No, the children would hug and kiss him when he left the morning and when he came home. We were a very, very close family.
First of all, his family was his big passion. He had a great love for his family, and then he had a number of good friends, of course, that he enjoyed being with, and the community. And the Famille Furlane, was a passion for him. And of course, the work that he was doing in Parliament. I mean, he was always very active and working hard for the people of Canada.
This native son of Friuli, Italy, became a very proud Canadian. Peter left his personal mark on Canadian society. Former Prime Minister John Turner has said, Peter's contribution to multiculturalism in this country is immense. He helped build a great multicultural and metropolitan nation.
Peter had a lot of obstacles in life. I mean, first of all, he spoke several languages very, very well. He spoke French quite well. He spoke Spanish, I think, with some degree of skill. He could speak Italian in some of the dialects. He understood the dialects, which I really didn't. And English, so he could speak to people in their own language. First of all, he was very good on domestic issues, immigration. He understood the Immigration Act terrifically well, and in that sense, I think he was, in a way, one of the architects of multiculturalism in this country. Truthfully, I think he was.
Peter had a tenacious loyalty to Canada, his adopted country. Yet at the same time, he had an inherent love and affection for Friuli, his land of origin, where he often returned to offer assistance and support to his former countrymen. Peter loved all things Italian. He loved wine, especially winemaking. He loved gardening, food, friends, music, opera, and above all things Friulan.
Peter was very proud of being Friulano, being Italian. He was proud of the Italian heritage, of the Italian culture, but at the same time, he was totally integrated in the Canadian society, and that's why his contribution was important.
Oh, yeah. Peter was Furlan first. He was a Canadian born in Friuli.
Well, he loved anything Furlan.
There was no question that he was a proud Furlan.
Bertiolo il 21 aprile del 2005 ha dedicato una strada a Peter Bosa e oggi è via Peter Bosa.
Peter Bosa was one of the most dedicated, hard-working senators of the Canadian Parliament. He provided a kind of moral leadership. He fought for equality within his community, his Liberal Party, and his country. He understood the value of human respect that inspired his actions and guided his behavior. He was living a very full life, breaking through barriers and redefining success. But on December 10th, 1998, he suddenly died.
He had colon cancer, but he did not have huge pains. And for a whole year, I thought he would get over it. I thought he would. The doctor said to me, Teresa has 5 years to live, but he didn't. He had a whole 1 year and he died because the cancer had spread already to the liver. Peter was a very good patient. He never complained. one evening he said to me that he prayed a lot, and I couldn't believe that he did that, but he prayed a lot in the evening. But he knew, I think by September he knew that he was going to die.
When a good friend dies, you lose a part of yourself. You lose a part of your memory because nobody else can share those. Nobody else will recall that. And so when I talk about Peter, you give me an opportunity to bring all those memories back and share them with you.
From the beginning of his struggle with cancer, Peter believed he would conquer it. As his illness progressed, he knew that his life on earth was coming to a close and that the disease was slowly wearing him down.
Oh, it was terrible. It was such a shock. He died December the 10th. And I for some reason, I convinced myself that he would die in the spring. For some reason, I say he's going to live until the spring. He's going to live until the spring. And that first year was, I lost weight. I lost a lot of weight. I was numb. My children, I have two beautiful children. The night before he passed away, he went upstairs to sleep, and he talked to Mark until midnight. And I remember that I was sleeping on the couch, and I had those little things that you have for children to hear him. And he fell asleep at midnight. The next day, he came down, and I had a hospital bed for him in the family room. And he became blind. I noticed that he couldn't see, but he could understand. That day, his friends came, Adolpha, Roger, Pavan, and Louis Gagin, and they were talking to him. He could understand everything, and he was going like this. He could not talk, but I noticed that he could not see. And in the evening at about 7:30, 8 o'clock, he passed away. He just passed away quietly.
Peter and Teresa enjoyed a long and loving union. They were married 30 years. During those years, their souls flowed together. Their bond was strong, indissoluble. When Peter's soul returned to the light of divine love, their bond was broken, but not destroyed. For Teresa, Peter's death was hard to accept. He wasn't there to comfort, to love, and to hold. Yet she sensed that Peter never left her side. She felt he continued to cast his love energy over her.
So after Christmas, we went to Ottawa to clean out the apartment, to clean out his office. And in the apartment, we had a condo in Ottawa. I said to Angela in the morning, I had Angela and Tommy. My baby was born in January of 98, and Peter died in December of 98. And I had a feeling that somebody touched me. Peter had the habit of going like this. I said to Angela, your father is here. I've seen Peter in the mirror. I've seen him one day, one evening, it's 11:30, and I had my grandchildren sleeping upstairs, my three grandchildren, Tommy, Daniel, and Michael. And I heard somebody fall. And I'm running upstairs, but I don't know why I turned around at 11:30. I don't look at myself in the mirror. I was wearing a white nightgown, and there's a man in the mirror. I thought, oh my God, there's a man in my house. I turned around to look, and there was nobody in the house because I have an alarm. Nobody can come in. The babysitter, we had a nanny. She was sleeping upstairs. My grandchildren were sleeping upstairs. And I thought, oh my God, that was Peter. I know the first year I could feel him in the bedroom. I could feel him there. I thought, oh my God, I never believed these stories. My mother always told me stories about ghosts and this and that. I saw him in the mirror.
Death leaves a heartache no one can heal. Love leaves a memory no one can steal. Love is greater than death. Death has no power to separate those that true love has joined together in this world. Lost love is still love. It just takes a different form. When the five senses fade out, another one comes to life, the memory. By remembering, we can win a small victory over the inevitable death. Peter Bosa was an indefatigable and dependable politician who was an incredible force in his community and his country. He was a brilliant individual who inspired those around him, and he left behind a legacy of faithful friends and a loving family. Peter Bosa was a refined, gentle, and humble man who was larger than life, and he now rests eternally in the hearts of many.
I remember him as a bridge maker. I remember him as a person who believed in the ethic and the ethos of multiculturalism, and I know he was involved in various committees at the federal level, both for his own party and the government of Canada, and he truly believed in this mission. So thank you for your gracefulness, thank you for your gentlemanly, thank you for teaching those of us who came after you to try to emulate that, because there were clearly other examples that were less gracious that sometimes we follow. So I would certainly want to say that. That is my greatest personal memory. I haven't evaluated any historically. I haven't done that, but on a personal level, that's what I enjoyed most of Peter. Always with a smile, a gracefulness, but interested in getting to the point. But getting to the point in a way that made everybody feel comfortable.
I don't think that we ever fully understood or appreciated what he had done to us as a community.
Well, life goes on, but what remains is the memory of the person. And I think that the memory of Peter is a good one, and that's important. For me, he remains what he was when he was alive.
These trips that he used to take every couple of years with his friends from Fulan, they were trips of joy. Peter liked to eat, he liked to drink, never in excess, but he had a good taste for wine. He liked food, and he was a man of all seasons, a man for all seasons. So I know if that spark, by the way, according to Jewish tradition, never dies. The spark, your physical body leaves you, but that spark remains. And I'm sure that somewhere, running around in the subatomic world, is Peter's spark that's burning ever brightly, and it's burning brightly whenever we talk. When I talk about him, he comes back, almost like a bright picture. So I have a bright picture in my mind about Peter.
Purtroppo fino a quando 15 anni fa ci è mancato, e io lo posso solo dire che Peter, a me, a livello personale, mi è mancato molto. Ho sentito la sua mancanza, le sue telefonate, le battute, le risate, si condivideva molto, i viaggi in Italia. Grazie per quello che ci hai dato, per quello che ci hai insegnato, per il segno che hai lasciato. Ci manchi ancora. E cosa posso dire? Quando le manca il vuoto lì, non lo si sente immediatamente quel giorno, ma dopo si sa che cosa succede, eccetera. Immagino che la stessa cosa sia successa anche alla sua famiglia, a Teresa, a Mark e ad Angela.
Oh yeah, a lot. Worse now than at the beginning. At the beginning, you have this idea that he's going to come back, but he doesn't come back. They don't come back. But they live with you. He's in this house. I wrote the story of Peter's ghost. I wrote to Jean-Paul Colombo, who writes books on ghost stories. And he said to me, Teresa, you must have loved him very much. I said, yeah, I did. I did.
Do not stand at my grave and weep. I am not there. I do not sleep. I am 1,000 winds that blow. I am the diamond glints on snow. I am the sunlight on ripened grain. I am the gentle autumn rain. When you awaken in the morning's hush, I am the swift uplifting rush of quiet birds in circled flight. I am the soft stars that shine at night. Do not stand at my grave and cry. I am not there. I did not die.